Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Make It Your Business podcast, the podcast where we like to share our journey as business owners, entrepreneurs, whatever you want to call it. We believe very much in trying to cultivate a podcast where people can share the journey of being an entrepreneur, not just the end game, which tends to be what a lot of business-focused podcasts are all about. So we're coming at it from a local business owner's perspective, and hopefully we're going to have lots of guests and stuff as we go forward who are in a similar boat. So if you're an entrepreneur or a startup owner or even a big multinational corporation owner, we hope that this is insightful for you and just sharing our stories from inside the trenches. So my name is Duncan Casey. This is James Murray. We're based in the Cambridgeshire, Lincolnshire area. Well, both our businesses are. I'm an actor and producer, but I also own and run a content marketing company called Copper Sprocket. I suppose I ought to drop the name in there. So yes, that's what we do. We do a lot of high-end video for clients. We also team that with SEO and general content buffoonery in an attempt to help sort of grow people's brands and awareness. And so far, we're doing all right, but we could be better. James.
Yes, and I'm James Murray. I've got a finance brokerage again in Lincolnshire in Stamford, and I help businesses with their growth plans and arranging funding for them. I've run my business now. I'm into my third year, having spent 7 years previously in the same industry, and 10 years previous to that was sort of in the motor trade. And I guess I think one of the reasons we sort of wanted to start this is we keep having conversations on the phone. And we go off on a tangent and we said, we just really need to record this because there's a lot of value there for business owners. And from my personal experiences, I obviously speak with a lot of businesses of all different types and sizes. And one of my sort of unique offerings really is I don't just arrange finance, I really help businesses with their growth. So that's, we touch on marketing, strategic plans, cash flow, and everything in between. And with your expertise on that more marketing side, the acting, all of the sort of the SEO, video, everything that you do, I think we've got a nice combination and enough experience now. We're getting onto our later 30s. Have you hit that? Oh yes, of course.
I crossed that Rubicon. I'm about to turn 41. Actually.
Oh right, well there we go. So I feel that we are both at the stage where we're relevant enough, but we've also got enough experience. We're in the trenches doing it at the moment. And this is just sort of a bit of a shouting out into the void. Anybody that wants to listen and come on that journey with us and just share our experiences. Hopefully we can help people along the way. Obviously, some shameless plugs of our businesses as well, I'm sure. But hopefully we can add some value out there.
I hope so. Yeah. So we thought we'd structure things loosely, but based around, talking about our perhaps recent experiences or recent challenges we've had, whether we've overcome them or not, don't know, but just sort of sharing that, and then maybe have a topic to talk about for the day. So have you had any what's been your most sort of, what's the challenge that stands out? Obviously we've got years to kind of pull from, but what's been a recent challenge?
Other than the challenge of just trying to pick a name for this podcast.
Yes, definitely, yes.
For anybody listening, so we were just went to record and Duncan said, we need to actually have a name because I'm going to have to make an intro. So we've been working on that, haven't we? So we've just stuck with one. Hopefully that's fine and it's not been already massively used.
To the lady from Saskatchewan who also has a podcast called Make It Your Business, you haven't posted since 2023.
Yes,
so I'm afraid.
I've not got all day to be thinking of names. It reminds me of those times back as a kid when I think it was like on PlayStation, you had to pick like a name and they'd already all been taken, I'd spend an hour trying to pick the right sort of handle, or actually even for Twitter in the day, like picking your Twitter handle and trying to get everything had already been gone, and having a standard name like James, I mean, it's probably been easier for you, Duncan. It's not.
I managed to get, I think with Twitter or X now, I got Duncan Casey, I think. Did I? Yeah, did I? I can't remember. Go and look it up. But I was surpassed in my Z list fame by an Ulster Union rugby player So he and I exchanged the occasional message on there, which is quite fun, called Duncan Casey. And bless him. He's very nice. But yeah, no, it is just one of those things, isn't it? It's branding. It's kind of like, well, you could subject yourself to days of torturous
well, how much does it matter?
Brainstorming.
How much does it actually matter when you look at like the big companies out there? Or when I first heard of some of them, and you think, well, is Diary of a CEO, is that really the best name in the world? It doesn't really matter, does it?
So again, and like this sort of comes back to growth for this podcast is probably going to be slow and grinding, but something like that, and like he grew that, for example, because he started getting celebrities on, and that is generally typically how you do it, right? You try to get people who've already got a bigger and bigger following.
Yeah,
of course, that's a way to turbocharge your growth. The danger with that, though, is that you're inviting people on who are have plenty to teach and are very insightful, but aren't really, they succeeded. Like he had Mel C on, who's great, and it was more of a kind of mental health podcast with the odd plug, or Davina McCall, who I love to bits, but again, someone whose success came 20, 30 years ago, and it's like, well, that's not.
But it helps boost the algorithm, more listeners, and if you've got a really wide audience, if you're not too niche, then you can do that. I actually put a post out on there, as we all probably do, as a lot of business owners do, try and build content on LinkedIn, but doing it in a way which is authentic and genuine, rather than sort of selling yourself. And one of the posts that I did was, it was World Book Day, and I thought, well, something that had been a genuine thing that had been bothering me. I sort of saved this post for a couple of weeks because I thought, I'll save this for World Book Day. And hopefully, obviously, the main goal with LinkedIn is to maybe just create some engagement and to sort of show awareness and create an audience so people know where to find you. So obviously that's always my goal with it. But I put out there, and the relevance of this is I'd been into a Walker's bookstore with my children at the weekend before, and had noticed on the shelves that many of the books there, even the children's books, are written by celebrity authors.
Right.
And it really frustrated me in the fact that, and again, I don't know this for a fact, and I'm sure there's still some really well-published books that are both written by celebrities and also non-celebrities. But I thought how many of and this is what I posted, and actually it created a lot of interaction on LinkedIn, but how many of those books have been missed because they've been replaced by a famous footballer, because again, that's going to sell copies, a bit like with the podcast. Do you want that business owner that's really in the trenches, that's going to be telling you about their business at the moment, really relevant facts, or get Richard Branson on? Well, Richard Branson's he's going to get more listeners, but how relevant is that going to be in your SME? Well,
it's all stagnated as well. I mean, I find this, as an actor in the film industry, in the TV industry, constantly I'm up against that glass ceiling of, but who are you? I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I have an extensive credit list. I've done over 33 films and TV, credit, all sorts of stuff. But I'm not famous. And that's always the selling point. Like I'm attached to a few TV shows at the moment that I've been attached to for a while now, and they're trying to get them sold. But I know inevitably, they get interest and they get to a certain point. And, we do have some names on some of them. But invariably it's that. But the problem is because, and I'm talking really about the film industry here, but certainly that mid-budget, and the same I think is true to a point in business, that mid-budget, that mid-tier has sort of fallen out of a lot of investment and all that kind of thing. There's no investment in the future. So all the people we just wrote, like Richard Branson, all these people were successful in the 90s.
Alan Sugar.
Yeah. Well, these are all people who have then...
credit to them. They've done an amazing job.
I mean, David Walliams sprung to mind when you were talking about children authors. He started that thing, and then he's got, is it Alton Towers or wherever, he's now got a whole... thingy park.
That theme park.
Yeah, like part of the theme park is dedicated to his books.
Not Little Britain.
No. That's the thing.
It's Come Fly With Me. There's a ride.
So that's, and you're right. The problem is that it feels like they grabbed a load of ground, those people, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and they just fiercely fought off everyone else.
Well, it's been happening in you think of Conor McGregor with whiskey, and who's the guy, Kevin Hart. I remember watching one of his programs, and they get involved in everything because somebody invested in Coke a while back, Coca-Cola, and made them. And so I think Ryan Reynolds. They've sort of, these celebrities have become
and like everyone,
yeah,
like James
but I think there's like this set business model now though, where the famous person insert business model and team, and then let's just use their audience to sell these products, and eventually some of the really good ones will then work on that, buy a football club or something. They'll maybe take another strategic move, but then you find a load of other celebrities buying football clubs, and
you see it all the time though, like it hanging these properties on more older and older, like age is not, like I'm not, this is nothing against, this is not an ageist comment. I suppose I see it through the prism of casting a lot of the time, but when you've got like Al Pacino and his young family in something, you go, I'm not buying, he's the grizzled detective with a young family, he's like, oh, the trials and tribulations of a young family. It's like, come on. Well, like, you're 80. What are you doing?
Well, we were talking before about obviously the Amazon have got the James Bond franchise now, and what's going to happen with that? And I'd love to see some unknown, talented actors take it on with a real.
Me too.
You're probably at 41. I don't know. It depends what sort of theme they go with, but. Just some,
Roger was 45, just saying.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking, Academy or something. But anyway, they could really go and do something with that. But there's a good chance they'll go and get endorsement from, big known names, and the brand itself doesn't actually need that. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. And maybe there'll be a shift in time. Maybe budgets and companies' budgets will change the tactics that these companies go with. But obviously getting back to how that affects us today. If I guess if you're an SME or you're a young entrepreneur or somebody just starting a new product, you can do one of two things. I guess you can piggyback and pay for that endorsement, depending on regulations of your sector. In finance, we have to be a bit more careful on that side of things for introductions, but you can kind of plug your product, pay that influencer or that introducer to get you leads, or you have to really bootstrap things from the start, build up your sort of offering, your audience, and have that slow grind, which can come with it, and is a nice journey sometimes, but can come with its challenges. And the problem is, I don't know if this is a phrase, but we only really read the autobiographies of the people that made it, and not necessarily the ones that didn't. And for everyone that did, there's normally hundreds that didn't. And I know when I used to read those books when I was younger, I was always reading the books of the people that made it. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that that's always the blueprint to go and do something. And I guess kind of going full circle here, I guess what we can do here is share these sort of stories, because we're seeing it in the trenches, seeing these things happen and seeing how people are navigating in very complex space. We've got more opportunities than we've ever had to reach people, reach an audience at a very low cost. But everything is quite diluted, and it's quite hard to actually get that message across and find your voice in a very loud space.
Yeah, I do think. Well, I mean, you've got two angles on it. Like, from a media point of view, because obviously it's become ever more democratized. We're shooting this in my kitchen with a bunch of stuff. I know
it's lovely
on iPhones. So that's fine, but it's meant that, for someone like me who's trained and experienced in media production at a professional level, there's an awful lot of people who've come into the space, I suppose, in the time I've been doing it for 15 years. In that time, you get a lot of people who've set up at home and done their own thing. And no, they're not actors. They're not necessarily saying they're actors, but they conflate just being on camera with being an actor. And there's a lot of... it's come with its own challenges, and I suppose then you've seen the rise of the influencers, and I suppose you've got that, when we talk about learning from people who've done it, we've got between us decades of past experience to draw on, which I think is important to listen to for people. But I think nowadays as well, you're also up against that. You can technically make it overnight, as people trying on underwear become multimillionaires and have huge followings because internet. and social media. And it's hard to, I think the problem is you've got a generation now that's being raised on that thinks hard work, like longevity, like all that stuff goes out the window because I could just make it by, but it's so fleeting.
And they don't use passive language.
No.
It's you do this, you don't do that. I went and did a talk at college recently, and I got some really nice feedback from some of the students. I think about 17, 18. And one of the guys at the end, he said, I really enjoyed the content. He goes, but you could be a little bit more positive about it, a bit more, I think he might have said even confident.
Right.
And I think what he mistook me being, he mistook humility and maybe just not being too boastful with being shy about a subject. And I thought afterwards it's really good feedback maybe for that audience, because what that young man has listened to is probably a lot of 60-second videos, a lot of YouTube influencers saying, do this, follow me, do that. It's not really passive language, whereas actually life and business, as we know, a lot of it is in the grey. It's not black and white. So I'm speaking from a very real perspective, but probably not actually hitting the audience with where they want clear, direct instructions on, and it doesn't really work like that. No. And on that point of and maybe somebody getting fame overnight, sometimes it's not really got any downside, because if you're selling clothing, or it's a fashion brand, I suppose there's not really a huge downside. But at what point are we sacrificing quality? Because where does that fall in? So let's say maybe if it was financial, for example, and I don't know if this could really happen, but using it as an example, if you've got a financial advisor with 15 years worth of finance knowledge, giving you some very maybe more boring but very structured advice financially, but then somebody comes along that's really fun, is an influencer, is a famous face, they're going to get more ears. But if they're an overnight success, what's the quality and what's their experience and their industry going to be?
I think it's hailing outside. I'm not sure if that's an omen of some sort.
Don't do this.
Very dark, I mean, I have friends in the influencer space, if you like. I've got a friend, for example, who's got a very, very successful YouTube channel. He's up around 750,000 subscribers now. He's done that now for I think 10 years odd. And he's always tried to be authentic. His thing has always been, no. The reason why I've stayed in the game so long is because I'm authentic. And any brands or anyone that I endorse, it's not because he'll always go and buy them first and try them out, or he will put his money where his mouth is. And he genuinely does this. I know, but he gets grief. I don't want to name his name because I don't want to get but he gets grief because people don't believe him. But when he does endorse something, it's because he genuinely has used it, and I know that for a fact. And I've done some work with him as well. So, but he's not really interested. What you're talking about, people who want to amass are following very quickly, and they will. And unfortunately, now you can pay to do that. You can, and people don't. The metrics they tend to look at are audience size, not audience engagement. They don't, it's all the hero metrics.
Initial reaction as well, followers or subscribers. They're those things that your brain has an automatic reaction to, but it doesn't.
If you take that, is it Latman or whatever his name is, that I won't swear, but that Egypt who's popped up overnight, who does that like running on the spot thing.
I've not seen this. No,
and it's like,
what's he doing? What's his thing?
I don't know why he's all over my Instagram, but it's
good. We got something to admit.
I don't know. No, but he's like a bodybuilder, but he does like he just does this thing where it looks like he's running really fast, but he's not. And I'm like, this is not a marketable skill. The problem is that the Instagram has kind of made it look like it is. And yeah, sure, he might like get 1 million views like overnight, but it's crude and wrong. But the Hawk Tour girl, who was everywhere for 5 minutes until she launched like a crypto coin, and it's just like, what is this? Like what? And that to me she should be, and it's no disrespect to her, but she should be the poster child for what's wrong with 100%. Instant fame, because there's that thing recently, isn't there? Like they've been talking to kids for a long time at schools and said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the number one thing they say is, I want to be famous. No, they want to be famous.
Oh, okay.
And you go, for what? And they don't care.
I think that would that not have, I think I think maybe that's always been the case, and maybe people have wanted to be famous. I think but it's maybe been more of a dream, whereas now it probably feels like a reality.
I think people wanted to be famous, but they've wanted to be famous for something. They've wanted to be a famous actor, musician, but they've wanted to be known for being the best at something.
I started with like X Factor and stuff.
Oh no,
Pop Idol. I think I think that was the change.
Yeah. Well, because it was just insta fame. I just want fame. Because fame is, I've done, when I've done acting, I've been to it's a very pretentious name, but I've been to the Actors Temple, and they teach them the Meisner technique. Some of it's a bit sort of culty, to be honest.
Sorry, what's the Meisner technique?
So Sandy Meisner was an acting coach who came up with this. It's a repetition exercise. So anyway, it's a specific sort of acting technique. The thing I took away from it was it's about trying to get to authenticity in a performance, basically. But part of what they do is they try and break people down. So you go in there and they go, why do you want to be an actor? Right? People end up crying and leaving the room and stuff. But it's a fair point, because I go, why do you want to be an actor? Well, because, I just really like acting. Yeah, but why? And it's just but why? And it always...
World peace.
Yeah. Well, basically, it always boils down to, like, my brother bullied me, or my dad wasn't around. There's some hole they're trying to fill with notoriety, not with... And for me, I guess because I went after having worked as an actor for a while, and because I love the work. Genuinely, I get a lot out of it. I feel like I'm in flow when I'm doing it. It's one of the few things where I sort of have a very strong instinct, and I just want to be creatively fulfilled. But and they go, why? And I'm like, well, because it adds meaning to my life. Yes, probably there's an element of me that is probably seeking some form of validation in an area that's probably unhealthy, and that's something you have to work on. Sure, of course. But ultimately, I know it's because it's what I love to do. Anyway, but my point being is that, like, people see these sort of being visible with being, and then certainly with fame. We've gone off on a massive tangent here, but with fame, with being sort of that with adoration and validation, and I think as well, and there's a laziness. Let's be honest. People think, well, I'll just put out a video, fart out a video a day, and get loads of money, and it's like, Well, I mean, it does sound good, doesn't it? I mean, shake my ass.
But like I say, you only see the ones that made it, and I think there's probably a misconception in schools maybe where those children are seeing the success stories, or what we might see as success, because it comes with its own problems. That only experience can tell you. I mean, I listen to other podcasts and things, and you hear people sort of say. The businesses, probably going back round to business here, the businesses that have made it, that maybe have sold, and they all say, well, actually, it wasn't about the money. You only need to, once you've made the millions, you realise it wasn't about the millions, and all this sort of thing. And the irony there is you can only really say that when you've done it. And I think the same thing with fame. You see a lot of very unhappy, famous people, and I think you hit the nail on the head with the acting school. Is why? What is your why? What is that purpose? And oh wow, we're really going to segue here. This is beautiful. It's the first time doing this. I've done well. I think that's in business. I think if you can find the why, then the business is so much easier, because you can, when you have those bad days, as long as financially you're okay, and you've ticked those initial hierarchy of needs, you can always fall back. Do I enjoy what I'm doing? Do I have a bit of purpose? And then that journey becomes so much more enjoyable, and hopefully you're still working towards your targets. And I think that's the equilibrium. That's where you want to be. But it's very difficult to explain that to somebody, and without sounding patronizing to a younger audience, until you have some experience. It's really difficult to actually appreciate that. And I think I only really probably understood it when I had children, sort of early 30s, managed a team, had a few sort of war wounds. You start to appreciate that, and it's only really been since starting my business that I actually started to really find my purpose. And one of the bits, if we're sort of giving out advice today, that I think I realised, and I realised it, I think, earlier than I actually identified that I'd realised it, but while I was employed, I was always sort of looking at trying to find a business idea. And I was so focused on the idea that I got lost in what it was. So I was thinking I've got books of business ideas written out. And actually, I fell into finance and brokering. And still to today, it's not the finance that is the thing. Okay, the finance is the product that I use, but it's actually helping people. It's helping businesses grow. It's establishing that sort of that connection. It's networking with people. It's that whole piece. The finance is just kind of the product that I offer as part of it. And it just took a while. I think I just never really understood that it actually doesn't really matter what the industry is as such. Don't get too hung up on the industry. It's also solving the obviously then you've got the industry, you've got the financial. So is there a financial path you can go on to, because we want to make some money, don't we, at the end of the day? But then ticking that other box of enjoying what you do and having a bit of a mission, you don't need to focus on the industry bit too much. It's more about the other parts that I think then you just use that, build some expertise, and then you can start to create something.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you have a strong enough why, the hows will take care of themselves, right? That's always I do think, because you distill things back or bring things back down. If you are thirsty enough, you'll get up and get a glass of water, but you won't think, how do I get to the sink? How do I pour a glass of water? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's about finding that, like you said, like I want to help people. Like for me, it's about, using my skills and what I do to help people tell their story. It's how I tend to pitch. It's about telling a story. And I agree with you. I think sometimes it's kind of the mechanics of that.
I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I really get stuck in that a bit, like the how bit. How do I get it, and that the technicalities and stuff. And sometimes, you just need to sort of have that core idea. Okay, I can do this. I enjoy doing that, and this is a good business model. And then figure the other bits out as you go. Definitely.
Well, we're coming up on half an hour. I think it might be a good idea to sort of wrap up there for this episode before we get into We've given me lots of ideas actually for what we can do in the next episode, so that's good. But yeah, I suppose that's the key takeaway, isn't it? Find your why. I know that's cliched nowadays to say, find your why. But it's true, because actually it will be your guiding light, and it will take a lot of the...
Duncan, everything's a cliche now. But they're a cliche for a reason. So I think actually we've probably, for the first episode, we've hit on probably a really nice starting point with why, because I think that's probably a good place for any sort of budding entrepreneur or business owner or a company that somebody that has a company in place at the moment that they maybe are feeling a bit lost along the way. Maybe a good kind of place to go back to. So for a pilot episode, I think that's covered a fair bit.
That'll do. Well, we hope the three of you, maybe mum, dad, thanks for listening. Listen to this, enjoyed it. Do reach out to us. Of course, we should plug our respective businesses. I don't know, should we share handles or should we share, I don't know, websites?
I think for now, if you look James Murray Finance, you'll find me.
Yeah, and Copper Sprocket, we're coppersprocketcontent.com for all your content needs and others as well. Thank you so much for listening to this stream of consciousness, which all good podcasts are, really. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you got something from it, and we'll look forward to seeing you for the next episode.
Thank you.